In this video, we are going to talk about inheritance in C#. Before that, this is the same application I'm using for the discussion here also. And that's an employee library with the class employee, with its data members, with its constructors, properties, and its method. Plus, there is a console application which is named as employee UI, is going to use this employee library, employee class, and we can create instances and call its methods, invoke its other members, etc., like properties. Correct? Let me just first of all build this entire solution and start with it. Now, say for your in your organization, you have different types of employee. Say one type of employee is human resource employees, that is HR people, I'll say. Okay, and another type of employees is like developers, senior developer, junior developer, project manager, etc., team lead. I'll just categorize them all as developer here. So in order to represent them, let me start creating uh, here two more classes. First of all, I'll add a class file by the name, say, developer. And this developer class, I'm going to declare it as a public. As you know by this time, if you do not access it, sorry, you do not mention the access specifier public, you cannot access it from outside the class, outside this application, not class, sorry. Now, this developer class will have more or less similar kind of attributes like employees. So I'm just going to copy them here and paste it here. So copy and paste it as part of the developer. And then I'm going to go ahead, write some extra attributes. Say, for example, this developer has an extra part of salary, which is, say, for example, incentive. Just for an example, say incentive pay. So developers receive incentive, right? And I'll just here, what I'll do is that I'll group them nicely. So there it goes. And yeah, these are all my other members. These are all salary structure related, right? Okay. And also this total salary, first of all, comes here, and the project name goes here. Okay. So these are non-salary related attributes, and this is salary related attributes. Okay, fine. So right now I have got an extra attribute here, incentive pay, and I'm going to write a constructor whose job is quite like the previous one to do all these things. So I'm just going to copy them here and paste it here first. So you can get the class name, sorry, the constructor name should be same as that of the class name. So I'm going to make the changes here. And there it goes, plus and extra thing like you are going to get decimal incentive payment, incentive pay. So I'm going to write here, I'm going to remove these lines, parameters, constructor, etc. Also remove this line and make it clean. There it goes. This dot incentive payment is equal to incentive pay. So this is the values that you are supposed to pass, and these are all salary related. So what I'll do again, I'll group them together, and these are, yeah. So right now this is how it looks like, and then I'm going to copy and paste all those properties that I have, that is name, total salary, employee ID, etc., whichever property I have, into this developer, right? And starting with project name, total salary, employee ID, employee name. Did I copy employee name? I think I forgot that, so I'll check employee name. I forgot it, so I'll just go ahead, copy these two, sorry. Copy these inside my developer also here. Say, so these are my properties, employee name, and I'm going to change all of them to that arrow operator style. So a little bit of time need for this kind of changes. Okay, so I'm going to write them using this new style. And these are all fine, so I can have them. This is my get, this is my set accessor, and let them be placed here nicely after employee name, employee ID. This is your project name. This is total salary. Apart from that, rest of them are going to be here. So let me take this age as well as birth year, both of them out of these, and make them in a nice order so that you can understand here clearly what we are doing. These are all my non-salary related data members. Yep, now that looks nice, isn't it? So there is basic payment. This is a DA payment over there, and that's its get accessor. That's its set accessor. This is my HRA pay. Okay, get accessor, set accessor also, and this is the total salary. Before that, this is your bonus going to be. Fine, nice. And as the last piece of straw, I'm going to copy this calculate salary and paste it inside developer, isn't it? That's all. This is my method where you have got an extra thing to add, that is this dot incentive payment, as because the salary here is slightly different with respect to that developer. Now you might notice in this process what I have done is simply I have wasted some time and also have written some redundant code, as because these are already part of the employee and I'm just rewriting it again and again, these properties, these maybe method is okay, as because the method is slightly different. The constructors are fine because constructors I have to write in each exclusively in each and every class, as because they are named as has to be same as that of the class name. Now, but these properties that I have written, which are all common properties except that incentive pay, I guess I have not written any property for incentive pay. So what I'll do is that quickly I'll manually type over there public decimal incentive pay, and this incentive pay has set accessor, which I'll write it in this format. So this dot incentive pay is equal to value, and get accessor says this dot incentive pay we are going to return from here. So apart from this extra thing, rest of them are nothing but redundant code, not entirely rest of them. These data members which are common, etc., fine. Ditto, if I try to create one more class like HR class, that will be also meaningless, as because over there I would like to write the HR class, but then I have to copy and paste all those common things. Now, you know that in object-oriented programming, there is a mechanism known as inheritance to solve this kind of redundant code writing problem, right? What it is? Actually, a developer, when you think that it is of the similar nature as that of the employee and they have the common attributes, which is pretty common in developer, HR, everywhere, what you can do is you can adopt the technique of inheritance. Okay, by inheriting from employee class, you will acquire all those common attributes, plus then additionally you can write those extra attributes that you want, extra methods or extra properties that you would like to write. So here, how in C# we do the inheritance? We put class name, the class which wants to inherit, after that colon, and then the name of the class from which you want to inherit, like employee, for example here. So that then what happens is that from employee class you more or less inherit, more or less I said, inherit everything except the constructors you do not inherit, as because constructor name has to be the same as that of the class name, so they are not inherited. Second is that the properties are inherited, and third is the method is also inherited, but I need a change also in the method too, right? The inside the code will be slightly different from the employee version of it, isn't it? So in the developer, what will happen is that now you have inherited all these attributes, so don't need to write them once again. So I'm going to delete that. You will acquire them and you can access also. But I do see that I'm getting certain errors. Anyway, I'm just not going to even write the static developer, as because the bonus is also part of every developer, HR, everyone, right? And also I'm not going to write this employee name, employee ID, age, or any other properties that I have over there, including HRA pay and bonus, as well as the total salary, isn't it? These things are not necessary to be written because they all can be now acquired from the base class. But still I'm getting some errors. What are they? These errors says that you do not have access, right? Employee name is inaccessible due to its protection level, as because in case of inheritance, what happens? is you inherit whatever possible to inherit. Which are the things possible? First of all, let me tell you, these data members are inherited in developer class, not the constructors. Again, these properties are inherited, even the function is also inherited, but constructors are not inherited. And now the problem is that these members which are present here, these data members specifically, are declared with private, and private members are not supposed to be accessed from outside this class, even from the inherited class, or we should say the child class and employee. It is a base class, right? So you should not you are not able to access them. Question is, if they are inherited, why not I am able to access? As because they have been mentioned with access specifier private. So you have a little bit of tweaking to be done here, and you need to give access to those data members inside the child class. In order to do that, we use a access specifier by the name protected. So you must declare all those data members as protected if you want to access, right? So this is how it is. If you want to access, go ahead, make those data members protected over there, and that's what I'm doing in each and every data member which I would like to access. Now one of them I'll not make accessible, as because this is already declared with public. Then also, anyway, I'm going to make this bonus also as a protected anyway, as because if you by chance wants to access it, but you will see later point of time I'm going to delete that too. Right now these members that I have declared them as protected, I can see from my developer class the error is gone. I just have a birth year. Somehow I think I have protected read only int birth year. It shows over there. So birth year, practically if I try to now access, what does it say? A read only field cannot be assigned except the constructor of that class where you have declared, not from any other class. So you are not going to assign birth year here. If you want to do that, then you have to make it non-read only, right? I do not want to do that. I'll solve this problem one by one, how to solve it too. But rest of the data members are accessible now inside this class. The fact is, they are all part of this class right now, but they were not accessible because the access specifier was private. So though the data members are inherited, because of the private you are not able to access them. That does not mean it will not be part of the child class, right? Now properties are part of it, and I'm getting a small warning regarding this calculate salary, as because in the base class there is a calculate salary, and in the child class I have also explicitly written a calculate salary method, but I need it. I'll talk about it later, how to resolve this warning. But right now this is what is going to happen, and I cannot access birth year. This is one problem that I'm facing that I have to solve. Now, I'll just go ahead and comment it. It's not a big deal. Okay, you are going to pass this birth year, but it's not going to be used, and since it's not going to be used, the age cannot be set. For the moment, I'm going to comment it, and then I'm going to talk about how you can create instance of the developer class and pass all those values. One of them is not being used right now, so we have to find a way to use it, and also we are getting a warning about the calculate salary. We have to take care of it also. Now let's go to this program.cs file and try to create an object of developer class. So developer, say developer is equal to new developer, and over there I need to pass all those values which I'm supposed to pass. So let me see what are the values I'm supposed to pass, and those are employee name, ID, basic pay, DA pay, HRA pay, project name, birth year, and incentive pay. The point is, even if I pass the birth year, what will happen? But before that, let me just pass all those values, or even before that, let me just call the default constructor. And what I'm going to show you here is that when you call a developer classes constructor, which are the constructors as together gets invoked. So what I'm going to do is that here I'm going to create a console.write line and say that when this constructor is executed, this line will be executed. Similarly, I'm just going to copy it and paste it in the employees default constructor also, and show you what happens, how many constructors gets invoked. So let's run this application and figure out what is happening. Have you noticed one thing? 3 constructors got invoked. One is developer constructor, beg your pardon for the spelling mistake, and then employee constructor, then also static constructor. And if you look at the order, first the static constructor gets executed, then employee constructor actually gets executed, then developer constructor gets executed. If you want to see the flow of execution, you can press F11 key and see the execution line by line. So continuously press F11 key here, such as I am doing. So in order to see line by line execution, I'm continuously pressing F11 key. So first call goes inside the main, and from there it jumps to line number 11, and you are calling a parameterized constructor of it, and the call goes to parameterized constructor, but surprise surprise, from there it directly jumps to the public employee, this constructor. By the way, you are not able to see the static employee constructor execution, which you can do. Let me stop the debugging once again and put a breakpoint around this line. If you want to see an execution of a particular line, and you can set a breakpoint to it, so you can just right click on it and say breakpoint and insert breakpoint. So I do not see the execution of static constructor because it is happening implicitly and internally. I would like to see that execution even. So what I'm going to do is that I set a breakpoint. Now I'm going to execute once again, but by this time debugging. So I'm pressing F11 key once again, which means step into the code lines. So the call moves to main function. From the developer constructor default you have called parameterless default constructor. Call goes to that. Then from that it jumps to first static employee being executed and bonus being set, and this line is being executed also. Then after that, now call moves to employee default parameterless employee constructor. That means the base class constructor. That line is executed, and then you come back to your constructor which you called actually, that is the developer's default parameterless constructor, and hence the object is created. Did you notice something? That is, the conclusion that we can make out of it is that whenever you try to create an instance of a child class, you call the child classes constructor. Now that child class constructor practically invokes base classes constructor. In case there is a static constructor, it will be executed first, then the default parameterless constructor of the base class. Now look at this once again. I am trying to make a call to the parameterized constructor of this developer, and I'm going to pass certain values such as, say, Anil is the name of the developer, and then ID is 100, then basic pay 1000, 2000 is the DA pay, 3000 is the HRA pay. Project name I am passing, but actually I do not want to pass right now because initially most probably the project name or not will be assigned, so leave it. So null. And then the birth year, though I'm passing, that does not make sense because no one is using it practically. And incentive pay is 2000, as you can see over there. So additionally this I have done. Now if I call this constructor even, what happens? So let me once again debug by pressing F11 key here and continuously press F11. So you jump to this line, then from there you move to the parameterized constructor. Look at this, from the parameterized constructor call again moves to the base class constructor, and initially static constructor is being executed, and after that it moving to the default parameterless constructor, then coming back to parameters constructor of the developer, and rest of the code is being executed which are possible to be executed, isn't it? So after these two debugging, you can see that whenever you create an instance of a child class, you practically end up invoking the base class's default parameterless constructor. And that is why in one of the videos I said that it's a good idea that whenever you are writing a parameterized constructor, it is best to also side by side write the default parameterless constructor, as because this might act as a base class, and in case of a base class, if there is a child class, obviously there is a child class involved. The child class will always try to invoke base class's default parameterized constructor, and by chance if you do not have that, say for example I comment it and I compile this code itself, it will show one failed, and the error list shows clearly there is no argument given that corresponds to require employee name, etc., all those things. That's because you have forgotten to have a default parameterless constructor. Since you have a parameterless constructor, compiler of C# is not supplying now this parameterless default constructor. So you must have a parameterless constructor in the base class. Set aside this one. Let's see. So final conclusion is that every child class constructor invokes the parent's default parameterless constructor. This is its default nature. Okay, so we came to know about the constructor execution sequence here, right? By the time you also have an issue, this birth year is not being set actually, as because being the read only, you cannot set it from the child class constructor anywhere. You have to set it via the parent class constructor. Not only that, there is one more issue. Have you noticed I am writing these lines which are assigning the values, except the last line. These lines are redundant. Even if I write this, uncomment this code and tell you the solution, again, still these will be redundant lines, the repetitive lines which we have already written in employee class, isn't it? So how you can resolve it? Practically, I have noticed whenever I create an instance of child class, I call either of the constructor, default or parameterless, default parameterless or the parameterized, you have seen always it invokes the base class's default parameterless constructor. Can we change this nature that I want when I call a child class's parameterized or the default constructor, it should invoke base class's parameterized, not the parameterless default constructor? Yes, you can change these execution nature, constructor execution nature, and for that C# provides a nice mechanism, that is, invoke a base classes constructor from the child class constructor explicitly, which one you like. See, generally default constructor gets called, so I don't have intention to explicitly invoke employee class's default constructor. I just want to tweak its nature and divert the call towards the uh, parameterized constructor of employee, and this is how you can do it. From which constructor you want to call the parameterized constructor of employee? Generally, I would like to call it from developer's parameterized constructor. So after the developer parameterized constructor function signature is over, after that put colon. Looks like I'm going to inherit. No, you are not. Then use a keyword known as base keyword. Using this base keyword, practically the base keywords points to the base class of the developer, so it's pointing to the employee class, and then if you put round bracket around it, you will be able to call base classes constructor. So why not the constructor name? As you know, base keyword means it's pointing towards the base class, and base class name and the base class constructor name is same. So practically if you put round bracket, you are invoking the base classes constructor itself. As it shows, there are two constructors, one of them is default parameterless, which I do not want to call as because it gets called by default anyway. The other one is parameterized constructor, and this parameterized constructor that I am trying to invoke asks for you have to pass employee name, ID, basic, DA, HRA, project name, and birth year, which I have already received in this constructor, right? You are passing it from the main function. So what I do is that I bypass these values to the base class constructor. So in order, I just pass over there employee name first, and then not this employee name first, this argument I'll pass first, which have been passed here. So this one first, then I copy this employee ID, I'm bypassing this employee ID, then employee basic pay, I'm passing that one to employee DA pay in order, next one, then HRA pay is passed over there, right? After that, project name, so I bypass this project name even, plus this birth year, which I was not able to set here right now, I'm bypassing it to the base class constructor in this fashion, and there, that's all. You don't have any other arguments to pass over there, isn't it? So bypass them. What is the beauty is that then you don't need to write these lines once again. Okay, you can just only set the value that you want to set here, which is exclusively part of this class. That's all. Right now, if I try to execute this code, what happens? Let me have a look. Okay, so I just start debugging. Call moves to developer class constructor invocation, which is parameterized. All the values have been passed except the project name, which you can set later by the property. Now then call moves to developer class constructor. From there I am saying explicitly invoke parameterized constructor of the class base class and bypass those values which I was setting here. So the call moves to the parameterized constructor. First it will obviously touch the static constructor and then set the value to the common data member bonus. Then it comes back to that employee constructor, which is parameterized, not the default parameterless this time, and all the values that you have passed are being used to assign all those common data members, correct? And this is how they are being initialized. Then the call returns to the developer parameterized constructor, and this is the extra data member value that is being set, which is exclusively part of the developer class, doesn't belong to the employee class. And then you are able to create the instance of it nicely. So from this you can conclude that in C# you can invoke a parameterized constructor of base class using base keyword in this fashion. You have to decide just from which constructor of child class you would like to invoke the parameterized constructor of the base class, and you have to pass all those values that have been passed over there from the main function. You can bypass them, keep whichever necessary in exclusively part of the developer class and get it assigned over there. This is a nice technique which helps me to avoid my second set of redundant code. The first set of redundant code declaring all those same data members, the same properties, everything here was avoided by inheritance, and now by using base keyword I have avoided another set of redundant code here too, which getting set in the employee class itself and then being inherited in the developer. So when the developer class instance is being created, it's a combination of all those employee members plus developer's own member, which is incentive pay, together is a developer instance, correct? So this is how inheritance works in C sharp. So conclusion here, if you want to create a child class and inherit from a base class, after the child class colon base class name. And to remember, unlike C++ and all those, you don't have any mention here of private public access specifier here. And I have to tell you obviously that remember here, if the base class that is employed is by chance public, obviously the child class can be of two types. One, it can be declared with internal access specifier as well as public access specifier. But if the base class is internal, then the problem is that you will have a compilation error saying that inconsistent accessibility, base class employee is less accessible than the developer class. Why it is so? As because if you wanted the base class to be internal, that means you didn't want to make this class public to the outside world. So if developer now inherits from the base class and try to expose those class members to the outside world, that is invalid. That means a base class less accessible, child class more accessible, not possible, whereas base class more accessible, public, child class less accessible, say for example internal, possible. Here there will be a compilation error. That's because in the console application you are not able to access the developer class, nothing else. Okay, but otherwise in your library when you create a base class can be more accessible, a child class can be less accessible too. So right now I'm making it public, and you can see the importance of inheritance, which helps you to avoid redundant code and retain the similar kind of features as part of the developer, plus the base keyword, which also helps you to avoid another set of redundant code just by bypassing all this value by explicitly calling the base classes constructor and get it assigned in the employee class itself, then inherit along with the value, right? This is a nice feature, but then still one part of my problem is not solved yet, and that is not this warning. I'm talking about something else. Look at this employee calculate salary function. In it there is a code in order to calculate the total salary, right? Now the fact is in developer I have written quite the similar line. Additionally I have added with it the incentive pay. Is this possible that in the base class there is a calculate salary method which I can invoke from the child class's calculate salary method, get the partial salary and then add with it incentive pay? Yes, 100% possible. How? First of all, using similar base keyword, again now put dot, as because you are not invoking the constructor. Call the base dot calculate salary, means you are talking about invoking employees calculate salary, which will return you right now partial salary. Don't use the partial as a name for the variable because partial is a keyword in C# also. Partial salary, and these partial salary you can use it to calculate this total salary. Now I have made a mistake, and most probably you have noticed till now that what is the mistake, as when I call base dot calculate salary, it doesn't return me actually anything. Then I can get that partial salary by using employee classes property, that is total salary. This total salary, which is also protected member, or you can access the property. I have accessed the data member directly as because it's protected, and you know that this dot total salary has been set in this by this calculation. So I can access it once again and then punctuate it incentive pay and recalculate the total salary once again, right? So in this way I can avoid another set of redundant code, my third set of redundant code, where I was calculating the salary from scratch. Rather than I can invoke the base classes calculate salary method and get the partial salary calculated, then I update my total salary by punching this incentive pay, which you can write also by this way, plus equal, isn't it? So this dot total salary plus equal this dot incentive pay. That means it will first fetch the total salary, which is partially calculated thanks to this previous line, base dot calculate salary plus you are punching with it incentive pay. Now if I go back to program.cs and I would like to see what would be my total salary, so I'll just call here developer dot total salary, but not to forget, before that I have to also invoke developers calculate salary method, right? Now let's see what happens over there and what is the output that you are getting. So this is what you are getting, 10,000, right? Now is it 10,000 really? 2 3 5 2 7 and 8, plus don't forget that you have already said bonus which is 2000. So 8 plus 2, total 10,000. Yes, the salary is being calculated nicely, and this is how your inheritance base keyword, constructor execution sequence, and all these things comes into the picture. So in this video you came to know about all these concepts, and the next video we'll talk about inheritance a little further again. So conclusion is that you inherit from a class after putting colon. This is your child, this is your base class. You can use the base keyword to invoke parameterized constructor of the base class. Also, you can invoke some other members of the base class which are obviously accessible from the child class, right?